Our first segment is about AI and the future of the workforce. We are doing this with our beloved Juliana Broste as the moderator. She is our award winning, let me say it again, award winning travel journalist. If you don't know who she is, you need to look her up. You need to find her on LinkedIn. She's one of us. She's an alum. She loves talking to the next generation. And the truth is, she's going to lead us in a discussion about the rapid growth of AI and how it is reshaping the workforce and creating new types of jobs across industries. Many companies are investing in technical, manufacturing, and emerging technology roles that support the systems behind AI, some of which offer strong career opportunities without requiring a 4 year degree. Where is that? In this session, we will explore how AI is changing where opportunity exists and what skills, more importantly, you will need in the years ahead. As technology advances, uniquely human strengths, superpowers, because that's what it is, communication, creativity, collaboration may become even more valuable in how you all land your opportunities. I hate that we call them soft skills because it is those soft skills that are the hard skills that are going to keep you in the role. Your resume, your bio may get you in, but how you show up in that work is what's going to keep you there. Without further ado, I need to welcome our beloved alum, Jules. Where are you? Bring her out. Bring her out. Jules. Hi, Jules.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. It's so good to see you, Nikki. It's been a minute.
It's been too long and we need to have a proper catch up. And it's so good to see
Mhm.
you. And thank you for being here. And I know you're about to introduce your fabulous panel. So I'm going to step off and let you do your thing.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you again. Yes, that was a wonderful intro just to understand that these are interesting times right now. The world threw us a curveball and everything changed, right? And so now is an important time to prepare ourselves and learn from the experts on what to expect because we all know that maybe what worked to the years leading up, maybe we have to make a couple pivots or shifts or changes to really get where we want to go in the future. So AI is a hot topic. I know just the word, some people get excited. It brings, emotion of innovation and change, speed, and for others, fear, right? Pause. Hold on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not yet, not yet, right? So we all have a little bit different feeling when we think about AI. But today we're going to talk about how AI is affecting the workplace and jobs. So I have an incredible panel here full of expertise. I want each of them to introduce themselves as they come up on stage. We have Henry L. Greenidge, who's with DoorDash. We have Stanley Ball with Intel, and also Lisa Schwab from Aspire. We are going to have an incredible conversation today to bring together these worlds of tech and storytelling and really just put together some key takeaways so everyone can walk away a little bit smarter. Henry, do you mind introducing yourself first? I know that you have a lot of experience specifically in AI as you've been advising so many groups in your area at DoorDash.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Juliana. It's really great to be here. First, I have to say I am an Emma Bowen alum, and so it's just so funny being in this place now. It does not feel like it's been so long where I was in your shoes. But yeah, I work in AI today. I started off with a career in communications and journalism and sort of pivoted multiple times and found myself as a lawyer and advisor to technology companies. So started my career sort of advising driverless car companies, and now I'm at DoorDash Labs where I lead policy and help them explore how they deploy delivery robots, drones, driverless cars. And so it's an interesting time for AI. Would love to explore that a little bit more with you all.
Yes, very much. We have to talk about all the robots. But thanks for just a brief overview so we get a sense of your area of expertise. Stanley, why don't you go ahead next? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing as Chief Integrity Officer at Intel.
Hey, it's great to be here with you all. And for those of you who are in the Midwest, in particular, a big shout out to you. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and spent the majority of my adult life in Chicago as a litigator. So unfortunately, you've got two lawyers on the line with you, but we'll make it all work. I'm currently based in Washington, D.C., where I serve in the capacity as the Chief Integrity Officer at Intel. For those of you who may not be familiar with Intel, we are a global manufacturer and designer of semiconductors. So hot topic, especially when we're talking about AI. In my day job, and I'll turn it back to you, I'm responsible for three kind of main areas. The first is I cover all of our ethics and compliance programs across the company. The second thing that I'm responsible for is our corporate security, so securing all of our people, all of our property around the world. And then lastly, I manage our management level risk and integrity committee, which focuses on our enterprise risk management structure, policy governance for the company, all of our internal investigations, and last but certainly not least, our crisis management infrastructure. So it's great to be here with you. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Yes, so many. You're really covering a lot of area over there. Thank you for a quick intro. Lisa, tell us a little bit about what you do over at Aspire. I know you have a wide background, a range of experience, from chief revenue officer to investor to founder, and all kinds of cool titles.
Yeah. It's been a smorgasbord. I am a two-time startup founder who spent the last decade at Cable Labs. If you don't know about Cable Labs, it's an R&D organization that is funded by Comcast, Charter, Cox, like the 65 global operators across the world. And what I did there was ran a startup accelerator. So it was really cool because I've been an alum of two startup accelerators. I ran one for the industry. And then I ended up last year coming to work for one of those companies that I was promoting and putting on stage. I'm at Aispire. We take all this network telemetry, which y'all cannot believe how much data they're sitting on top of, and for a long time haven't really known what to do with it. We put context to that, correlate it, and we're building a vision where we're bridging the chasm between network operations and customer experience, because they don't have the same KPIs, they don't speak the same language, they just do not understand each other. So our story, our data is telling a story that is much needed in the industry and will absolutely improve the experience that you'll have at home when you have those micro degradations, et cetera. And so I'm over all the revenue and marketing. So sales and marketing is my bailiwick, and I'm very happy to be here with y'all today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Well, yes, you'll have to really decode some of this data because there's so much. And I come from a completely different background here on our panel, just because coming from a traditional creator background as a storyteller, the girl with the camera who's always writing scripts and editing and touching all the buttons, and really just finding that AI is touching even the creative space with so many innovations with, transcribing this conversation into words, just quickly and easily, having AI help us with transcriptions, creating photos and in generative videos and all kinds of stuff that's not exactly real, but based on reality. So yeah, just seeing how AI hits the data side, like Lisa mentioned, and integrity and all of those, ethical decisions for big companies like Stanley. And yes, even playing with the robots and all the innovations with an app-based, a real app company like DoorDash. Henry, there's so many interesting angles that we could really go about this. So just to get started and just to get a sense of what your daily life looks like, can we go around and talk about really something specific that you did today or even this week? And how are you using AI in your workflow just on a daily basis? A real broad question. Go ahead. I'll start with Henry again. We'll just go in the same order.
Yeah, so I'll start. It's funny. I had sort of this canned answer about how I use AI, which I'll get to. But this morning I was using Cloud Cowork to respond to my expenditure. So I travel all around the country for DoorDash. We just got Cloud Cowork. We are required to use it and find new use cases for it. And I figured out a way that I could actually submit all of my expenses. I had like over 200 expenses over the past 6 months that I am so late on submitting. But it took Claude, maybe 10 minutes to pull all of my expenses from my email. It looked at my calendar. It looked at my Slack. It figured out where I was. It added notes on everything. And I basically just did 4 hours of work in 10 minutes. And I just figured it out this morning. So that's just one example of how this is changing, everyday work for us. I can tell you, I am from a generation where at my level, I would have had an assistant to help me with these things. And in fact, when I left WABC TV, which was my sponsor, I started as an account executive, and I had an assistant who did all of my travel, all of my budgeting. That doesn't exist in many respects today, unless you are in the C-suite for many companies. And so you can find these new use cases to really help you and make your job easier. In terms of what I do on a regular basis, I'm looking at local laws. I'm trying to figure out ways in which DoorDash can release its autonomy products in a legal way. I have to meet with mayors, governors, city council. I have to meet with the general public. And so what AI allows me to do is have debates, just myself and the AI agent, on how I can best position the company. And I go into these meetings prepared because I go through this exhaustive approach of, figuring out what the law is on the books, what DoorDash wants to do, what is the public sentiment, what has happened on the ground before. All of that research is really at your fingertips. So I do use it, and I use it a lot.
Cool. That was a really good example with just having, just saving yourself 3 hours and 50 minutes on your expenses. We all got to get our money back. So cool. That was a great example. How about you, Stanley? AI this week?
Yeah. This week I took a very, very long legal memo that I wrote. It was about 35 pages. I'm not proud of the fact that it was that long, and used an AI solution to turn it into 5 PowerPoint slides that people would actually read. So I'm trying to, preserve my own ego that they read something that I put together, and more likely than not, they'll look at the PowerPoint slide. But in terms of kind of the broader strategy, I'll give you 3 examples of ways in which we're kind of improving how we operate and using AI solutions in that space. Number one is, as a part of my responsibility, I have to go through a lot of different email communications and invoices to find anomalies when looking for potential fraud or evidence of anti-corruption. And so AI solutions just help speed up that review, and things that would take weeks or months can be done in a day. The second thing is, from a physical security perspective, I think we can all appreciate, it's one thing to have a whole bunch of cameras around, and then you have human beings on the back end watching in real time. It's a game changer to have AI built into the cameras to help you really identify things that you should be focused on. And you can reduce the amount of human interaction that you have by having those solutions in place. And then the last thing that I'll just throw out there, and then just be in the news if you're paying attention to geopolitical issues, is focusing on supply chain and kind of mapping out where our critical suppliers are, where there's disruptions, to be able to more quickly react to things that are happening in real time, and get ahead of catastrophic events before they impact our operations.
Wow, I need the prompt for that one. Yeah, it's crazy how just from the little menial task to like even big decisions can use a little assistance. Cool examples. Thanks, Stanley. And Lisa, how about you? How are you using AI in your day-to-day flow?
Yeah, all day, every day, actually. I was thinking about, in my 20s, I went to take an HTML CSS class. I thought, well, I'm a photographer on the side, and so I have great design skills. I can do this. And immediately after one class was like, this is so dumb. This isn't going to exist soon. Why do we have to know all this code? I just wanted to be WYSIWYG. And so when sites like Squarespace and all of those were popping up, I was like, oh, we're almost there, ish, right? And so we had to do a light refresh for our website recently, and my guy is in Peru, and we have a time difference, and so I just ran into some glitches and went to Claude Code and was like, how do I change this? Here's the existing code. I need to change it. And, in 4 seconds, I had the new code, put it on the site, was able to make all the changes that I just, I didn't want to do the whole site that way, but in a pinch, it certainly helped me. I think for people that aren't technical, it's a lifesaver. I've had ideas my whole life of things that I wanted to build and do. And then my process with designers and with developers is it can be very frustrating. It can be very long, right? And you're like, oh, that'll be 2 weeks. And Why does it have to be 2 weeks? And so now you can do that. I mean, I had an idea for a side product at our company, and I vibe coded it in Lovable, and I took that and gave it to my developers, and then they enhanced that and made it a real thing. But I had something more than just a sketch on a napkin or me verbally vomiting on them about an idea. I had an actual wireframe and the code that they could then go in and enhance and make sure it was safe and then host it elsewhere. That was a dream. And I have several AI assistants. I'm beta testing 3 right now. And so every conversation that I have is recorded. I can go back. I don't have to take notes, which I will say one thing for memory. I don't know that it's the best because when I write things down, that's how I always learned in school. And that's how I learned in my first jobs. And writing things down helped me remember it. And so I am trying to figure out what is the balance there of writing down the most important things, but I love being able to go back to my assistants and say, okay, what was the vibe on that call? Did Stanley seem perturbed on that call? I'll do that sometimes, and he'll be like, yes, there was a slight tone that made me think he wasn't comfortable. And I can have it sort of give me its assessment. Now, remember that it's my assistant for now. It's still my assistant. And so I treat it as such, where it's just another layer of intelligence that I put into the pot of my brain, right?
Yeah, that's funny. I was just thinking, like, how can I act a little more perturbed so that I'm like, does it really know these emotions, like the very specific, levels of engagement? But that's a very cool idea to have an assistant. Henry, it sounds like you kind of have your AI is helping you as like an assistant. But Lisa, you have three separate programs that you're trusting here on your day-to-day?
Yeah, because some of them, so like Fixer is one, FYXER. It has my access to my calendar, my email, everything. And that one is very interesting, but I don't think that recording an assessment of the calls is my favorite, but it does draft emails for me, which takes a while to get used to. It also categorizes my email inbox, so I don't have to look at all the junk and the calendar invite. All that stuff, it does it automatically.
We are going to talk a little bit more about the tools you all recommend, which I'm definitely going to get the pen and paper ready, because I'm sure there's a long laundry list to write down. But before we get too nitty gritty, I wanted to ask, thinking like big picture, and we're here to think about the workforce and the future jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. What is concerning you and what excites you? It's kind of a double-edged sword, because I'm sure when you think of the industry as a whole, there's a little bit of happy and a little bit of sad kind of combined into one. Maybe. Stanley, do you want to kick us off with this one, just to think through some of the big picture things?
Happy to do it. I'll start off on the positive about what really excites me, and it's sort of how I use a lot of AI. It's great to co-create in an environment where you don't feel judged at all. It's a great place to start when you're thinking about kind of a large-scale program or process or something that you're not familiar with, to ask a lot of questions and get a sense of how has this been done from an historical perspective. And the example I would give you is, the Deloittes of the world, the BCGs, the McKinseys, they exist for a reason, because in the old days, when you wanted to do a large scale kind of corporate transformation, you called them first to help ideate and think about what you're trying to get done. Now, that first kind of conversation, that first thought process, that first sort of ideation session can be with you and your computer or whatever program that you're using to start thinking through what are you actually trying to get done. And so it's a great way to just get started and not start from scratch when you have to call someone to assist you. On the more negative side, on the concern side, what concerns me greatly is that as companies are attempting to show the return on investment, that unfortunately they will separate a lot of employees prematurely, not realizing that individual productivity is very, very different than enterprise-wide productivity. And what concerns me about that premature separation of employees is that it actually sets back the overall adoption and actual achievement of efficiencies at scale, because you realize too late in the process that you don't have enough people to actually help you bring about the efficiencies that you're looking for. So it's my hope that over the course of time, people sort of kind of temper temper their desire to pull that trigger on separating employees and reducing their workforce, and really just give it time to see how it's going to be adopted and how we actually achieve what we all expect to happen, which is greater efficiencies and more productivity on a per person basis.
That's very cool insight. Just the timing of when, giving it a little bit more of a chance. Don't make any drastic moves. Stanley, I love hearing that. That's not something I thought of before. Very cool. How about you, Henry? Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I just want to say a lot of what Stanley just said definitely resonated. If you watch the technology industry and sector, there are a lot of layoffs that they attribute to AI and creating these efficiencies. And as someone who has worked in this sector, you're always looking over your shoulder trying to figure out, are you going to be next? And that is very, very real. I would also say, just regarding my work, sometimes I do feel like it's a double-edged sword. The work does excite me. I love technology. I love the fact that it is sort of iterating so fast. And, I work at DoorDash Lab. So it's literally a laboratory where I can go in one day and they're working on a solution for something. And the next week they figured it out, right? Those things are exciting. But one of the things that I worry about is the large companies, how they go about deploying their technology. So, for example, you're starting to see driverless cars all over the country. They're in Atlanta, they're in Nashville, they're in Austin, Texas, right? But these companies have invested so much money in behavioral AI, like driverless cars, that they really are focused on getting that capital back. They have to return a profit. And sometimes that happens without fully understanding the impact of deploying this technology in communities. To take it back to sort of LLMs and generative AI, one of the things that concerns me is that, young people are using this technology without fully learning or understanding the basics, right? And so you can use a chat GPT or a Claude to write anything for you, but you haven't had those years of writing and building those muscles and being able to analyze what these LLMs are producing to really think critically about what it means and what it says. And so those are the things that I continue to be concerned about. I'm worried about, how communication could get lost and the loss of a skill set. At the same time, there are other benefits. I will tell you, one of the things I never share at work, but I'm happy to share here is, I have ADHD, and these tools have helped me level the playing field just in terms of, my executive function, right? I've been able to build in these processes and systems, right, where I feel like I can compete with anyone, and wish I had these tools when I was a kid. So it's good and bad. I think, as a society, we need to keep having these conversations. The last thing that I'll say is, I do work with a lot of government stakeholders. There's a lot of concern there. I think, at a certain level, the legislative analysts and the folks who are sort of younger and use this technology every day really understand what it means. But I think a lot of the centers of power, they don't. I think it's a generation where they are only beginning to comprehend where we are here. And I just wish there were a little bit more guardrails.
Yeah, those are extremely important to think about the skill sets that people are building right now and how you can really be ready for the future. Thanks, Henry. Lisa, do you have any major concerns or real excitements that you want to share about how AI is shaping your space?
Yeah, I think, what's so exciting, I touched on this a little bit, was the democratization of expertise, right? That I can do things that I couldn't do before. I had to rely on someone else. That doesn't mean that I don't need that someone else and that expert at some point. I mean, I don't know when there's an error in code, right? I would never be able to know that. And so I think human in the loop is important all the way around. But I think to take an idea, like to go from curious to capable, someone with the right tools, and especially young people that are starting out, if you're curious about something or if you have an idea, you have all these resources now to make it instead of like, I used to come up with ideas and be like, yeah, but I don't know anything about water filtration. What am I going to do about that? I don't know anything about this, but I mean, it was really a great idea. The water things at the airport, I had that a long time ago, but didn't do anything about it. And now they're all over the place. And I was like, but I was going to wrap it and have an ad thing. It was going to be great. And now you can do that within minutes. You can research and you can figure out how to create an MVP. It's really incredible. I think what concerns me is the gap between who, I shouldn't say gets to participate, but who will participate and who won't, and who will think that it's a tech thing, or I don't know anything about that. Or like, I gave my niece a present recently. She's 19 and she was like, I just want you to know that was AI. And she's like, like, and I'm like, hold on, we got to talk about all the good things. Yes, there's concerns, but have you seen anything on our planet that hasn't had concerns? If we got rid of everything that had some corruption or wrongdoing, we wouldn't have anything or any structure or frameworks, right? And so yes, there's concerns, but I think I'm worried about it's moving so fast, and I'm worried about people getting left behind because I know, for instance, my hires, I just can't. We're running so lean. I can't hire anyone that is not working with it. I can't. And I don't mean engineers. I mean HR. I mean finance. I mean marketing. Anyone. If you're not working with it, I can't, because we're lean. We're a scale up, And so I think that really concerns me. And then I want to touch on one thing Henry said, because it was so poignant about people that don't have the skills to maybe discern. I think that a lot about, like fake news. And if you didn't grow up, my first job was at the Dallas Morning News in Texas, and journalism, the rock of truth. And that was so important to me in the process of vetting stories and vetting information and seeing what's happening now is concerning to me. And I think about generations that didn't grow up with that basis of truth, right? And that art of journalism. Well, I think that now about AI. This is not Google. And it can hallucinate, and it does make mistakes. And so you can't just ask it something and assume that that's the right. I mean, it does it all the time. So you have to be able to check it. You have to be able to have that reference point to know how to edit and check it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Henry, you had some big nods. I thought, do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think I have much additional thought to that, but certainly that all resonated with me.
Yes, absolutely. I think that fishy sense you guys both mentioned, I was just picturing the nose, like smelling truth, right? If that was actually possible. But just having experience, it does give us some level of what's real and what's not. But it's not, it's not a 100% fact checker. That definitely touches on the danger of the benefit of learning something totally new and foreign, but also not always having all the right information and trying to figure out what's what. A lot of AI results have the little link that you can follow through to double check something. But just to remember, like, are you double checking and fact checking? Even in situations like this, I've seen people use AI to create panel bios, and you're like, that's not true. I never wrote that book. So yes,
Yeah,
there's always.
I experienced that this morning. I was reviewing a bill and I saw something in the analysis that didn't quite seem right. And so I asked it again and it said, "Oh, you're right, Henry. I was pulling from, some other thing that was incorrect." And so it changed the entire analysis. And this was Claude, which in my experience, I've gotten better results from than Chat GPT for these types of tasks. And it was still wrong. So you definitely have to have that skill set to be able to look at something and figure out if it's off or not.
Well, that's very cool that it said, well, yes, I am wrong. Thank you for checking. It agreed with you. Just something fun to think about is just, what are the misconceptions? Maybe that's one, is like AI is always true. No. But are there other misconceptions anyone has seen out there that you want to flag for us to really think through? Like, okay, this seems so legit, and hey, be careful. Are there any warning signs or flags you want to share with us? Stanley, you want to, saw a big nod there.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's tons. We could spend the whole panel on misconceptions, but I think the one thing for this particular audience that I want to underscore is you have a role to play in how this scales across all of the various industries, and that starts the day you get in the door, whether you're an intern or you're coming in at an entry level position. Because spoiler alert, nobody has figured this out. I want to say this one more time: nobody has actually figured this out. And if you're paying attention to the news, what you should see, the themes that you should see coming out are that corporations are in the process of building their infrastructure, both physically and the solutions that they're bringing in house. So you got a lot of IT employees trying to figure out what's going to be helpful to the workforce. They're figuring out scaling and adoption of the tools that they invest in. They're in the middle of that process. But where the conversation is going to go, not too far from now, is how do we actually measure that this is actually working? We have to talk about how do we effectively train the workforce that we have, because we don't have the luxury of just going to populations of people that already know what they're doing and only hiring from there. We still have large populations of people that we need to train and skill, and set an actual curriculum where we can say, hey, we've invested in our own people. There's a conversation that needs to come about how do leaders be more thoughtful and empathetic, but transparent about how their workforce is going to change and shift. You need that. You need to have those leaders available. And the other part that really needs to be discussed is security, and protecting intellectual property that has long existed before some of these solutions that help you create have come into place. So there's so much that still has to be built out over the course of time. And for the members of this audience, I would just encourage you to learn as much as you can, get your news and information from a variety of different sources. But when you get into the workforce, when you have a seat at the table, even if it's not an official seat at the table, if you got to pull up a little chair on the side, but to get engaged and ask insightful questions, because nobody has this figured out full scale.
Absolutely. And you mentioned just building the workforce, and even in your area with Intel, have you identified any jobs and career paths that maybe the people in this audience should be kind of targeting, as this might be an area of growth or some?
It's everything. Lisa said it the best. I mean, it's everything. There is no job, there is no industry that is not going to be impacted by this revolution and this technology. It's all about how quickly can you figure out a strategy where you can use it to your advantage and become more efficient. But there's nowhere to hide on this one. It's everybody's going to be impacted. It's just a matter of how, and if you embrace it quick enough, you'll be able to be the leader in figuring out the advantage for your own personal career, but also show up in a leadership capacity for your organization or the company that you start yourself.
True, absolutely. And Lisa, even what you mentioned as far as, you won't hire somebody who isn't using AI. Are there areas of opportunities that you've noticed?
I won't hire someone who's using AI, who's not using it. Like I have to have people that, because we're running so lean. But I was thinking, I don't think this is a misconception, but everyone's worried about jobs disappearing, and then a lot of younger people are, and rightly so, right? There's concerns around copyright and artistic integrity and using artists' work. Like that one, as a photographer, really gets under my skin. And I think it's what I would look at if I were entering the workforce now is, what are the ways that we can make this acceptable and make it good, right? I mean, tech for good. Like the internet, people were afraid that this would happen with every evolution of technology that has come out. And yeah, there's bad things with all of it, right? The internet is good and bad, and it's because of humans. And so the sort of automation and downsizing of personnel has been happening for, 100 years. Like automatic switching reduced the number of operators, electronic switching reduced the number of techs. This has been happening, and we just adapt and we change. And, so when people think about, oh, it's going to take all the jobs, it is going to eliminate some jobs, but so has technology from the genesis, right? And so what does that do? Well, that makes you have to rethink, how do I work with it? How do I use it to my advantage? When you go into a company, don't even assume, like, I think, was it Stanley or Henry said, some of these companies do not have it figured out, you might get hired at a place that's like, yeah, we're figuring it out. Because I mean, I talked to an operator one day that said, we're just going to wait until we see who the winner is. And I was like, get out of here. Do you know who the number one chat platform was in 1997? Anyone? Alta Vista. Who? Right. It doesn't matter, like, whoever is gonna be the first is not gonna be the last, and it's gonna
Mhm.
they're gonna gobble each this is we don't know how this is gonna play out, so, like, don't wait, and I guess I get if I was starting my career, I would bring AI to the table with me. I wouldn't wait till I get into a company because if they have some corporate trainer that's gonna try to train people on I have found that to be super ineffective, unless that person has really gone and done unless they're using it because it's a utility tool. And I think on that note, it's not going away. We're not going to turn off the AI models. The utility is too great. It's going to cure diseases and optimize our energy grids, which suck, and solve supply chain crises. It's going to do amazing things. And so I guess I would say you can think all those things about AI, but if I were in the position of young people that are going to be business leaders and engineers, is not how do we stop it, it's how do we build it better. Even the water crisis, which is a legitimate concern, isn't a stop sign. It's like an open invitation for y'all to invent the sustainable infrastructure of tomorrow, and not it's y'all and us, right? I mean, that's something. I mean, all of those companies are looking at getting away from evaporative cooling because it's wrecking localized water supply. And so they know that they have to look at different ways to cool it because this is very high energy intensive. And so I would like that's an opportunity. Like that's super exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. And I love how simply you put it as just this is a non-negotiable. We need to incorporate AI now in to be a valuable resource, and don't be scared that it is going to eliminate some jobs. How do you see things, Henry? I know you work with a lot of different departments and some really cutting edge, interesting ways that you've explained with the obviously driverless car ideas and other things. But
Yeah.
if you were a student, which direction would you send people?
Yeah, so a couple of things just to kind of pick up on what Lisa was saying and offer a different perspective. So I'm at a company where we are highly encouraged to use AI. We're almost being required, and we all just at an employee level, we think where this is going is they're going to be evaluating us on how well we use these AI tools. So right now we have enterprise versions of basically every tool there is. Again, we just got Claude last week. And so that is going to be the go-to. And so you are encouraged to figure out ways to increase your productivity using these tools. You're encouraged to share your ideas and use cases. I'm encouraged, just as someone who manages staff, I have to encourage my staff. We have to have an agenda item in each staff meeting where we're talking about how we're using AI. And so it's no longer a secret. It is a must do at this company. And I think many others who understand the value, right, that they get from allowing us to do more things. So there's that. But I also wanted to just tell the students, like, now is not really the time to panic at all. I think now is really the time to lean in. And that's sort of what I think Lisa was saying. You should really understand these tools. I don't think you need to understand all of them. My advice would be to pick one that you really like and really go deep. Really figure out all the capabilities. It's going to change. It changes so quickly. But that way you can kind of keep up on what's happening here. What I would also say is, these are examples for me that make it clear that you have to keep learning. On one side of it, there's sort of the credential side, right? Where, there are additional degrees. And I think you need to figure out what makes sense for your career path, whether you want to go to grad school, right? Whether a certificate program could help you, all of those things, right? But what AI allows you to do is to get the knowledge from those programs. So let's say you're not a great project manager and you don't want to do a PMP certification. You can find all of that through these tools. And so, but the key is you got to keep learning. You got to keep iterating. You got to keep getting better. I think that is one of the biggest differences from at least where things are today versus my parents' generation, where they stayed in a career and maybe they didn't have to go to grad school or keep the learning up as much, right? So I think that is key. And the last thing I'll say is just like figure out like your pivot points. Be very, very aware of where things are headed and figure out how you can maneuver. You have to be really flexible, highly adaptable, and your vision for yourself may not be exactly on point by the time you get to where you're supposed to go. And so I think you need to allow for the possibility that the plans that you have for yourself may change based on circumstances. And so you need to have that open-mindedness and that flexibility. And the last thing I would say is like, it sounds really corny, but you have to keep dreaming. You have to have dreams that you want to accomplish and figuring out ways to to hit those goals. I think and using AI tools to do so will get you in a period of sort of action, which I think is the most important thing instead of being stagnant. And you can't consider it wasted time. You have to consider that as part of the process to get where you need to go.
That is so interesting. And I love that. Yeah, you're saying you're going to fail. The road will be windy, but you have to go down the road. Right. And I want to I know thank you guys, everyone, for your great questions. And this conversation is just so interesting. I know we could go on for hours, but I want to take a couple audience questions as they've been coming through. And this would make sense to talk about. This one was just, have you, especially with Henry, what you were just describing is, do you notice a difference in attitudes towards AI from different generations? And, we all have our own level of how much risk you want to take, and you want to be comfortable. You want to do what you know how to do and what you're good at. And so for AI, that's a very big jump for a lot of folks who are like, I don't even know where the information, there's a lot of like unknown mystery. So have you noticed that like generationally,
Absolutely.
or just even if not generationally, how do you approach someone who is kind of anti-AI? And that's also someone else's question in the chat.
I see it generationally and by sector. So my mom is almost 80 years old, very computer literate, very computer savvy. I'm trying, and she uses AI, but what she will not do is share her email, her Google Drive, her calendar, all of those personal things. That is the line that she is not going to cross to increase her productivity. And I think that is a generational thing. Across sector, my wife is in academia. She's at this Ivy League institution where, they are still unclear on how they want to use AI. And so my wife leads external affairs and comms. And so she is very weary about using AI to draft speeches and things like that. So I do see it across those two areas in particular, but I think that's going to change very, very quickly.
Very cool. Lisa, I see a little smile. You're coming up with some ideas there.
Sorry, I was now you got me into the Q&A, and I was like, I can answer some of the. I got my ADHD kicked in. I'm sorry. Can you tell me the question?
Oh, no worries.
AI. What did she ask?
No, there are just so many good questions in here. That's why I wanted to just jump in there.
Generationally.
There's a lot of we obviously in this panel, we have provided a lot of great examples on how AI really is working for you and why it would be a good thing to know about. But how do you respond to those? You've said it more clearly than anyone, Lisa, is if you're not on the train, like we're leaving you.
I mean, so it's funny. This morning we had sort of an overview for the entire company of our new natural language query chat that's going to be able to go in and like assess all of this data and the contextual information that we put together in our machine learning platform and be able to tell any executive. It doesn't have to be someone in network operations. It can be anyone. It can be marketing. It can be customer experience going in and saying what's happening at this node or this in Alpharetta, Georgia, whatever. And it will give them information in real time. And so, I've told my niece and nephew, hey, whatever you do, I don't care if you're going to go be a hairdresser, I want you to use AI to manage your business and your scheduling. And by the way, when somebody comes in, it's like, I just need something different. I want you to take a picture and show them what they look like with AI before you chop their hair and then them hate you for life. Like, figure out in whatever job that you have, how can you incorporate it to make your customers delighted, to make your life easier, to make it more efficient, more creative. It does all of these things, and it as your assistant, right? It's nothing without you. At least for now. It's not, you can't go doing anything without you. So you have to prompt it and you have to learn those prompts. And I think what that is just curiosity. Like, do not let your curiosity fade. Over time, there's been studies that people lose curiosity. It's a childlike quality. No, don't let it go. Because that's the only way that you can learn, is just to jump in, and don't be like my grandma, who is afraid to click anything on the computer because she's afraid she's going to call, I don't know, China or something. She doesn't know. She's like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, just click it and see. I probably shouldn't say that, because then they'll buy something weird. But, just be curious about it and use it every day. Someone asked in here, like, what is the best way to use it at work? And I'm like, just start with a problem. What problem? What's the most annoying thing you have to do in your life? Expenses. Like Henry, I'm going to hit him up after this and be like,
Me
okay,
too. That is the most annoying part.
oh my God, like, it is the worst. It's still terrible. Even when you have AI in your Expensify or whatever, it's still terrible. And so think of things like that to start being curious about and using AI.
Oh, I love that. And even thinking about, the idea of like trust and being responsible, that's like, we're still learning if that's something we can, pin on AI. I know, Stanley, in your role, that's a big deal to really know when to trust something. And, with humans, we have all these amazing skills like creativity and judgment, understanding. And Daylene asked about, how do you balance that AI stuff and then like the human stuff? What advice would you give to her?
Yeah, no, I think the question that should be asked in every use case is, I know we probably can do this, but should we do this? And put yourself on the receiving end of what you're talking about. And the real world example that I will give you, and I've asked a ton of my peers at various companies about this, is you're starting to see when there's an internal investigation across any type of issue. There's this desire to use a lot of AI solutions to help in the process. And that can be in the form of, doing the triage, trying to ascertain what's actually being alleged. It could be using AI solutions as a part of the interview process and really heavily relying on those notes and not spending a lot of time rehashing what you were perceiving from a visual perspective and taking on cues from body language. And people get really excited about, wow, I can close out a whole bunch of internal investigations much quicker by using AI. And then I inevitably ask them the question of, okay, if you were the subject of the investigation, how would it make you feel if all of the critical judgment components of the investigation, including the discipline that was issued to you, was done exclusively by AI? How would that make you feel? And for those of you who love movies, there's a ton of movies about the concept, and spoiler alert, none of them end well. And so it's one of those things where no matter what you're building, no matter what the use case is, somebody in the room has to have the courage, has to have the exercise, the courage to ask the question of, I know we can, but should we? And let's really have just as much intensity and dialogue around what are the unintended consequences of productivity. That has to be a part of the process. And so, again, when I talk about there's room for you to play for everybody on the line when you get into these work environments, even if you're the person that just asked the question respectfully, not trying to build a reputation of being a negative Nancy or someone who's slowing things down. But I assure you, you can build your reputation in a very productive way by being known as the person you can go to who will ask the tough question, who has the courage when the rest of the room is moving forward, to be the person to say, stop, and let's think about all aspects of what we're trying to get done. And is this really what we want to be known for?
Very true. Thank you for giving us that critical thought. I was just reflecting too, because even as a video editor, there's a lot of tools now that will just bloop, bloop, edit together your social media cut, and it's making thoughtful decisions. And yes, that was helpful. I needed to post something today, but wait, should I allow it to like decide what's the most like viral part, of the conversation? It's just, yeah, everything we can use the tool for, we have to also think through critically, should I be allowing it to do that? Or are there other options to check that?
Or also, can I just say one thing about that? Because Cameron just had a question in there that I answered because it made me laugh about, I can tell immediately when people's LinkedIn posts are AI because they do the broetry thing and then they have it. And it's like, that's not like that's not intuition, that's blah blah blah, and like it has these declarative statements. It uses the M dash, like you can totally tell, and it doesn't mean that it might not be interesting, but I've started going, yeah, would that take you 2 seconds? Like, what's your own thought? And so I change it all up, and because I want it to sound like me, I don't sound like that, and so I will edit. But like I said to Cameron, it's always easier to edit something than to start, right? So AI always gets my starter going and gives me something to then go edit in my own words, and I take out all that stuff because it's weird to me and it's not real, and then we'll all start sounding the same, like our AI
Yeah.
tools, and that's strange.
We will all be back in the same boat. Well, we just have a few minutes left, and I did promise everyone that we would do a quick speed round where we would just share a couple tools, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Just if there's any tool that you're like, go out there, download this now, set up your profile now. Can we go around real quick? We'll start with Henry, Stanley, Lisa, and just burst out. What should we be doing with what AI tools do we need to know now? Go.
I think all of mine have been mentioned, so apologies. But Otter is my favorite and the most helpful. At work, we now use Granola, which also does transcripts for Zoom calls. I would say Calendly too is also a good one.
Oh, cool.
You hit mine, Henry. So everything else that I use is a homegrown things that we built inside the house. But you've hit mine from a commercial perspective.
Sweet. How about you, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Otter and Fixer right now, and then I also, for marketing, have Cintra. So Cintra has a bunch of little agents that are like my copywriter, my ad creator, my has like, I don't know, there's like 20 or 30 in there. And so for a lean team, again, it's really so much easier. I feed the brain of Cintra, and then I can say, okay, I need an ad that is talking to these people and does this, and it'll give me options. And again, I never take anything and use it directly, like no matter what it is. But that's been really helpful from a marketing standpoint. This is kind of a plug for my friend, but only because it is helping me so much. There's a friend of mine that got laid off from Comcast, and she wanted to jump into AI. And so she created this company, and there's a ton of these all over the place, but it's so fascinating. They have this black belt program that you can take as an individual or as a company. And so she's going into to Cable Labs and helping them learn AI in a different way. And it really took my prompt engineering to a whole nother level, because I wasn't thinking about prompting. Like, here's an example. You're a project manager expert, and you're going to walk me through a workshop. So they have all these prompts in there that are like, walk me through this workshop so I can answer you and feed you this information. And then you're going to help me come up with whatever it is. If it's a new branding campaign, if it's a new strategic framework, it takes off all of the books that Good to Great, all the ones that we've all read in business, and uses those frameworks. And so you can choose which framework is your thing and then utilize it for strategy, for HR, for finance, for sales, for marketing. It's really incredible. And I think, that just took me to a different level. Even though I was dabbling in the tools, I was still treating it like Google for the first year. I didn't know how to get to that next level. And the prompts in here just blew my mind. Like, oh, I didn't think I could use it like that. And then they're starting to teach you how to build your own agents too. So that's, worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, very cool. Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I'm going to rewatch it too. There's so many things, like little nuggets, that were just so thoughtful for where we are in 2026. I want us to leave with this idea that, of course, we've talked about all the benefits that, and changes that we've seen happening with AI. But as we have so many people in the room who are looking at the future of their careers and which direction they want to go, I want each of you, with your expertise, to just share one nugget so that, you can impart some piece of advice to these graduating EBF alums. And any order, maybe we go backwards, Lisa, Stanley, Henry.
Yep. For me, it's find problems. Some people asked me a while back, a couple of years ago, to come in and work with the CX teams on AI. And I was like, okay, but like what? And everyone at that point still thought, well, just come in and do your AI thing. And I'm like, well, there's no magic fairy wand dust that I have. So let's start with problems. And so I think that's really the best place to start. If you haven't been exploring or dabbling, lean in on your personal life even, and just think about, what is the most annoying thing I have to do all the time? How can you automate your household tasks, your roommate situation, whatever it is? Just lean in and start using it, because you're going to learn so much from doing that. You're going to learn about the tool, and it also learns you.
Yeah, and you're solving your problem, so that's perfect. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lisa. How about you, Stanley? One piece of advice.
Yeah, one piece of advice I would give to anybody is do not lose your appreciation for nuance and complexity. And the big push for AI is, the benefit is it can summarize and give you kind of the Cliff Notes version. People may not even realize what Cliff Notes is anymore, which is shows you how old I am. But you should always strive to understand what's the nuance, what's the bigger picture, and that's my overarching ask of you, is to appreciate nuance. The practical thing that I would share with all of you is to get your news from a variety of different sources. I learned by listening to long form interviews and podcasts. And so for those of you who are really aspiring to be business leaders, there are always podcasts where CEOs, chief human resource officers, CFOs, chief legal officers are getting interviewed. Find those podcasts, subscribe, listen to them in long form so you have an appreciation for what is the kind of leadership view of how the workforce is evolving. Do not ever lose your appreciation for nuance, complexity, and get in those conversations and learn how people are talking about exactly what we've just been discussing for the last hour.
Cool. Thanks, Stanley, because you're right. AI can give us the shortcut, but don't be concerned about doing the long road too, right? To really have a deep understanding. Thanks, Stanley. How about you, Henry? One last piece of advice for our friends here.
Yeah, I think Stanley just eloquently stated what I was going for, but I think all of these questions will raise the topic of, like, what does it mean to be human? And I think as students, you should really just think about that. And what does that mean for you? What can you bring to the table? Because I think that is going to be what helps to distinguish you from others. When Stanley was talking about the fact that, who is actually going to say something, who's going to ask that question of whether we should do this, I think you should have that in the back of your minds, because I think there's going to be a lot more responsibility, particularly for those studying journalism and communications, to really be the ones, the voice of reason from that perspective. And I also think, at this stage in your careers, there are certain things that, I think Stanley, Lisa, and I did that you will still have to do. So those relationship building skills, the art of networking, all of those things that make us human, I think still will be important as you go throughout your career.
Oh, thanks, Henry. Thank you, all three of you, Henry and Lisa and Stanley, for just this incredible conversation, thinking through the fascinating worlds of AI, how it's affecting jobs, and also how important it is to be human, to be curious, to really lean on those skills that only humans can have. Up next, we have a really wonderful panel about financial literacy with Ross Mack. So I'll see you all later. Thank you so much.